I'm Chance Dorland, and this is The Docket, our weekly interview program covering law and crime in San Antonio from ExpressNews.com, brought to you today by the law offices of Pat Maloney. And I'm joined now by San Antonio Express News courts and crime reporter Elizabeth Zavala. Great to always have you on the show here, Liz. It's our first episode of 2019, a very interesting case to discuss today. It's from Leon Valley. They recently dealt with a raid that occurred at the wrong house, and there are now some ramifications of this mistake. Tell me about it.
Yes, Chance. This was something that happened actually over the Christmas break, and I'm glad we're talking about it because it kind of got a little lost with everything, all the changes going on at the courthouse, and then in the city, not a whole lot of stuff going on. And this is actually a federal lawsuit that a Leon Valley couple filed on Christmas Eve. And they're alleging that their civil rights were violated after, in November, 3 Texas Department of Public Safety troopers and at least 8 Bexar County Sheriff's deputies mistakenly raided and heavily damaged their home in Leon Valley after they had received a tip that it was a drug stash house.
Yeah, this is really interesting because, as you just described, that does not sound like a pleasant experience to have to go through. But it wasn't just a mother and father or a wife and a husband involved with this case.
No, it actually has a very interesting way that this whole thing happened. It began when a woman by the name of Lucille Bosco had gone to pick up her child, I believe, from school. And Lucille Bosco is a registered nurse, and she was driving to pick up her 5-year-old from school on November 14th, about 3 o'clock-ish in the afternoon on Bandera Road, when she says 3 DPS troopers and other members of law enforcement, which after reading the lawsuit ends up being the 8 Bexar County Sheriff's deputies, or at least part of them, pulled her over because, according to the report, she did not use her blinker and her license plate was obstructed, and that she did not pull over immediately. And this is all from the lawsuit that was filed. And she said that once they pulled her over, she was asked to step out of the car, and she complied. And she says that they were trying to convince her to let them search her vehicle. And, she ended up letting them do that. And then she said that afterward, they wrote her a warning ticket, and she picked up her son, and she ended up going home. And then she says about an hour later, as she and her son were watching TV, they heard a loud bang, and something broke the front door and forced it open. So at this moment, she said several officers wearing masks with lights on their heads ran into her house, and they were yelling and they had guns drawn. And she said that an officer pointed a gun at her head and handcuffed her in front of her son. And she said that they had, while she is there trying to, comfort her son who doesn't really know what is going on and is crying out for his mother, apparently these, as the lawsuit refers to them, the defendant officers, they went room to room and they searched the home for drugs, and they opened every door, and they broke a bedroom door and a closet door. And after the search was concluded and they didn't find anything, officers took the handcuffs off of Lucille Bosco, and they handed her the warrant that they had, and then they left her home. So she and her husband had filed this lawsuit because of that.
So obviously that's quite a tale. If this could have been mistaken location, mistaken identity for some other reason, bad enough, but maybe you could kind of understand where the authorities were coming from. But apparently this was really a bad case of a mistaken location.
Yes, I find it very interesting. Also, as you know, we mostly discuss cases that happen in state court. This is a federal case, but you think about how this happened, and according to the lawsuit, a confidential DEA informant told authorities that that particular house was indeed a drug stash house. So these officers were acting on that tip from somebody that could be someone that they routinely rely on for information. So, a confidential DEA informant is just that. I mean, you don't see names anywhere. You don't hear about who it might be or anything. And that's actually one of the things that the people that the attorneys that are representing the Bascos are actually alleging that this particular informant may not even exist, and that maybe this was just a big mistake. So, even at the most basic level, Lucille Basco told members of the media at a press conference when this suit was filed that she's had nightmares ever since the police broke down the door and pointed a gun at her. She and her son are both traumatized. Her husband spoke some at the press conference as well, and said that, his responsibility as a father, he was not able to do that. Raymond Basco says that, it's my job as the dad to protect my family. And he's also a registered nurse. He was at work. He wasn't home. And, he said that what happened to his family was a travesty and it never should have happened. And what's really interesting also is the Bascos maintain that they have not received an apology, and that even though they were given the name of someone who might be able to help them get their property repaired, or, perhaps, I guess some sort of, compensation, or maybe even that apology that they're looking for, they said that they still haven't been able to get payment for the damage. Now, one of them did say that one of the officers did admit before they left the home that, oh, sorry, the raid was a mistake. But I think it's pretty clear that the Bascos want a little bit more than that, and their attorney, Solomon Radner, who is from out of state, says that they want a jury trial. He would not discuss a monetary amount that they're seeking, but Mr. Radner was very, very adamant in that a mistake was made, and at the very least, the couples needed an apology, and they needed to be able to have their property repaired, in a timely manner. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens with this case, Chance, because, I'm sure this happens a lot more than any of us really report about, in the media. It has to, I think. But it'll be interesting to see what happens, whether the the troopers or the sheriff's office, the county, Bexar County in this case, or the state of Texas, what they end up doing, for this Leon Valley couple who, were left with damaged property. And not only that, but also the fact that their child saw what happened to them. And, I would assume neighbors as well, because that's a lot of law enforcement people to show up, at your home all at the same time and wearing all of their gear and using something to break a door down. So I imagine, either I will be talking to you about this again, or my colleague Guillermo Contreras, who covers federal court, might be discussing it as well.
That's a really interesting angle that you just mentioned. I imagine those might have been some hard conversations once you just kind of get over the fact that the police have raided your home and handcuffed you in front of your child after, you kind of regain your composure. If you go outside, that conversation with neighbors, oh, no, that was a mistake. Try to explain that,
right.
the police were not supposed to be at our home. I'm sure that's a difficult conversation to have with several people, depending on what type of situation you live in, where your house is in the neighborhood. Elizabeth, before I let you go, one other interesting part of the story that I wanted to get your thoughts on. There were different officers involved in this raid. They weren't all from the same authority, but they were not from Leon Valley. So the Leon Valley Police Department was pretty quick to try to point out and let people know that they were not involved with this at all.
Oh, exactly. I'm glad you mentioned that, because, this actually happened in the city of Leon Valley. And I will say that as soon as this press conference occurred, and as soon as all of us in the media were there, and we put our stories up online, or we, did other things, put them, you tweet out your stories sometimes before it actually appears, so that you try to get people to read what you've got coming out that's breaking news. Before I even had a chance to pick up the phone, Leon Valley Police Chief Joseph Salvaggio issued a statement that his department was not involved. So, in these particular cases, whenever you have especially if it's in this particular case, you've got the DEA involved, you've got DPS that was, working in conjunction with them, and also Bexar County Sheriff's deputies. So you've got 3 different agencies involved. So who knows? I guess I could have asked him, in this particular instance, are you do you get the heads up from another law enforcement agency? Pretty much everything that the chief said was that other law enforcement agencies prepared and conducted the search warrant on the house in Leon Valley, and that his police department was not present during the execution of the search warrant, and they had no knowledge concerning it or the lawsuit. So there you go. That was. It'll be a very interesting case. I'm hoping that we will be discussing a resolution soon.
And a big thank you to San Antonio Express News courts and crime reporter Elizabeth Zavala for joining me for today's episode of The Docket, our weekly interview program covering law and crime in San Antonio from expressnews.com, brought to you today by the law offices of Pat Maloney. For the San Antonio Express News, I'm Chance Dorland.